Biden just said that America is currently fighting no wars.
I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world.
Easily one of the most brazen and unhinged lies that a politician has told the American people in some time. You are funding, arming, and providing diplomatic immunity to a whole ass genocide, sir. And in order to protect said genocide, Joe Biden is waging war and bombing Yemen, the only country that is taking seriously their obligation to resist said genocide as outlined by the Genocide Convention. We also have United States troops illegally occupying Syria and Iraq, which led to United States troops being attacked and some of them even being killed. What is the word you use to describe a conflict where there are soldiers engaging and losing their lives on both sides? How can you guys say that you're a country not at war when you're literally illegally occupying Syria? Imagine being so bold that you claim you're not at war after arming Nazis in Ukraine and rallying the entire NATO alliance into conflict with Russia. We really need to stop allowing the ruling class to define what a war is. Sanctions is an act of warfare. Economic warfare is war. The United States currently sanctions 1/3 of the world's population, and these sanctions overwhelmingly impact the poor and the working class. The Democratic Party is the party of war and genocide. No one on the left, nobody who actually loves peace, should be supporting this criminal duopoly.
Israelis gather together to protest their right to rape Palestinian women. I wish I could say that was hyperbole, but this story is going to get dark. I'm letting you know now. Israeli protesters stormed a military base after several soldiers were detained after gang raping a Palestinian detainee. Now, upon hearing that, you might be thinking that those protesters are there to defend the innocence of these soldiers, but unfortunately, you would be wrong. Not only are the protesters defending the right to this particular woman, but Israeli lawmakers and politicians alike have come to defend the protesters, the soldiers, and the right for either of them to Palestinian detainees in the future. When a Palestinian lawmaker asks whether or not it was legitimate to insert a stick into a person's rectum, Milwitsky, a lawmaker, responds with, everything is legitimate to do to him if he is Nukba. Israeli finance minister and basically the overlord of the West Bank said that the protests to support the soldiers who gang this Palestinian were justified. Now, I need you all to remember that this is all happening within the context of Israelis feigning outrage about debunked claims of sexual assault and on October 7th to justify a genocide in Gaza. And of course, this is not the first nor the only story that we've heard about Israelis sexually assaulting Palestinian detainees, only for us to hear silence from the Israeli media and all the people who were feigning outrage about October 7th. But what makes all of this even more insane is that on this day, July 30th, 2023, Israel passed a law doubling the punishment of sexual assault if they felt it was considered to be of nationalistic or racial motivation. Critics of the law at the time said that this is obviously racially motivated and it would not be applied in situations where Israelis were raping Arabs. I've maintained consistently that most of these Zionists only want to use the idea of sexual assault to paint these Arabs as predators, and of course, to justify genocide. And not only do we have the qualitative evidence now to prove that, we know now that there is literally a law to punish Arabs double for something the Israelis are actually known to be guilty of, and that Israeli lawmakers believe Israelis are exempt from that law. So in conclusion, for the 1000th time, just know, when it comes to Zionists in Israel, every single accusation is a confession.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, we are back again. Welcome to another week of RBN Live. Nick at noon, Nick in the evening, Nick at any time. What's poppin'? Big shout out to my brother, my hotspot assassin brother, Nico House. I was going to cover this. I heard that Nico House had it covered, so I knew that he was going to spit flames. How is this not enraging our entire populace that we fund these absolute psychopaths? How is it possible that anyone can sleep at night supporting a politician that support the genocidal rape state of Israel? And I said this on Twitter, and I was expecting to cause controversy, but it actually did well in my circles. Let's see how it goes on YouTube, because I have to tell you guys the stark reality that I've seen, that I've been warned about, that many of my Marxist brothers and sisters, many Black intellectuals warn me of, and that is the scourge of Western feminism. Western feminism is a failed ideology. It is a fraudulent ideology that is used to get Black and brown people killed. White liberal feminists are disgusting. Where are the white liberal feminists on this issue? You have white feminists that were spending all their time lying, tweeting without evidence, smearing Palestinians as rapists. They said with no evidence that Hamas committed mass rape. And they did so in order to manufacture consent for the genocide that we're seeing today. 185,000 dead Palestinians. And you have these Western feminists, in order to manufacture consent for that, did what white liberal feminists always do. They smear Black, brown people on behalf of imperialism and colonialism. There's no different from the era of the white women who used to smear Black men as rapists and got us killed during the age of mass racial terror that white people don't learn about in the history books. That's permanently deleted because they think it's critical race theory. All the Black families were torn apart because of mass lynching and mass rapes and destruction of our community. And that was born from these liberals who smear Black and brown people as rapists. They feed into the sexual anxiety of the white man. And you see they are quick to jump on the propaganda bandwagon of smearing Palestinian men as rapists. Those same people, and I've seen so many of these fake leftists, these Bernie Sanders pro-genocide fake progressives that was saying, I can't believe RBN is defending Hamas. I can't believe you guys are defending Hamas. Don't you know they committed mass rapes? Completely unproven. Doesn't make sense. I explained how you had hundreds of Hamas fighters died on October 7th, Hellfire missiles raining upon them, life and death situations being shot at by IDF soldiers and armed settlers. You are watching your comrades in arms dying in one of the the most important mission of your life, something you've been preparing for your entire life. But they will have you believe that these fighters in this high pressure situation where hundreds of them are dying stopped and took rape breaks in a mission that was timed, where Hamas had to hit checkpoints. Taking hostages requires speed. In an operation where speed was essential, Western feminists will have you believe these Hamas fighters, in an operation that was successful, whether you like it or not, they took rape breaks. That's what they will have you believe. No circumstantial evidence, no police reports, nothing corroborating this. Western feminists came out in droves demanding the murder of Palestinians. We're covering the death camps. I was about to say concentration camps, but this is a death camp where they are mass raping Palestinian men. Many of them, actually, I would say 99% of them, innocent. Because the Israeli policy is any Palestinian over the age of 13, any military age Palestinian men, 13 from what, 70? They were just kidnapping. At Rafah, when they made the checkpoints, they was allowing women and children to go through, and they wasn't allowing men to come through. And this is exactly the results of feminists and what they wanted. I'm a Marxist. I'm a revolutionary. I'm a socialist. I believe in liberating the working class. Liberating the working class is liberating women. Anything else is shit-lived nonsense. And I have seen enough. I've seen enough history, and we've seen how Western society weaponized accusations against black men, Palestinian men, and the Western societies buy it up. And now we have actual evidence, whistleblowers from Israel, that's exposing the mass rape program, which is not new. I've been covering this for years, my friends. I am not a Johnny-come-lately who discovered Israel on October 8th. I've been covering this issue for years, my friend. This is nothing new. There were stories of mass rapes in detention centers decades ago. I'm going to see if I can find it. I have a receipt. I think I retweeted it. Fuck, I didn't save it. Maybe it's in my, let me check my email, where they highlight the mass rape, institutionalized sexual violence. Oh shit, man, I need damn, I didn't save it. I got a lot of receipts to go through anyway. Maybe it's in my notes somewhere. But these are things that have been reported on for years. I reported on this for years. I told you guys about the Palestinian torture dungeons and mass rapes months before it finally been reported in CNN. And I cannot emphasize enough, where are all the liberal feminists on this right now? The mass raping of Palestinian prisoners. They are silent. At what point do we stop denying these people agency? They know exactly what they're doing. They weaponize feminism on behalf of white supremacy and imperialism. That's it. That's the game. All those corporate journalists, all those people I see on Twitter haven't said a goddamn thing about this. And as you have it being exposed of mass rapes, the response of the barbaric state of Israel, where liberals pretend the only problem with Israel is Benjamin Netanyahu. They pretend that if they got rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, that'll get rid of the problem of the settler colonial state of Israel. I told you guys from day one that was bullshit. I believe in this one-state solution. And I am not even buying, I've made the argument many times on the channel, I don't buy the idea of it as of an innocent adult Israeli, willing participant of apartheid, a society where everyone is forced to join the IDF. And the people who are not part of the IDF, they literally join blockades. There's a sick society that does not have the right to exist. Societies and states inherently don't have the right to exist. You inherently have a state don't have a right to exist. You get the right to exist from the will of the people. Apartheid states are not democracies. In an apartheid state, you're inherently robbing the will of the people you implementing apartheid of. Which means if there's any state that you can make the argument of that doesn't exist, it's an apartheid state, the apartheid state of Israel. And if you don't buy that argument, let's say you are pro-apartheid, let's say you love apartheid, the second that you are found guilty of committing genocide, I don't think you deserve to exist as a state, and I don't think that's a controversial position. Because as it was confirmed that Israel had rape dungeons, was annually raping men with hot metal rods raping them so bad it was hospitalized. There was a Palestinian that was gang raped. There was a Israeli female prison guard who was ordering the rapes of Palestinian women. As it's gone on, feminists silent as fuck, ready to stand for Kamala Harris. You got feminists that's ready to go to bat for Kamala Harris. AIPAC Kamala Harris, who took $5.5 million from Israel and AIPAC, who said Kamala Harris' response to the genocide was, we do not tell Israel what to do with our weapons. The same exact policy as Joe Biden. And you have liberal feminists, actually not even just liberal feminists all over. They're like, oh man, we gotta get the first female president, first genocidal female president. Israel's going through a January 6th like moment because you have armed militias and Israel's in shambles because the settlers are upset that the soldiers are being held accountable for mass rapes. There's so many of these footages. This tweet was funny. Israel's going through a January 6th moment because they can't rape. Tell me more about how Israel deserves to exist. Tell me more about an innocent adult Israeli settler and emphasize on adult. We are not like these child-killing scum. The Israeli settlers use their children as human shields because children cannot consent to be a part of a colonial apartheid state. As an adult, the second you decide to join the IDF as an adult Israeli, like all of them are required to do, they just passed a law where even Orthodox, extremely religious Jewish people have to serve in the IDF, and there's hell going on in Israel over that. You have Orthodox Jews getting their ass beat over that. But the second that you join the IDF, spare me the bullshit about these people being fucking innocent. A society where every adult has to implement apartheid. You talking about innocent Israelis? Israelis protesting because their soldiers don't have the right to rape? Israel could be the first country in history to start a civil war over the right of its military to rape prisoners. You literally can't make this shit up. They about to go to civil war over the right to rape. And the protests in Israel still on fire. They bombing countries. They bomb Beirut. They about to start all-out regional war. Israel is descending into civil war on the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinians. And you have the liberal wing of Zionism. You know, the wing of Zionism that Bernie Sanders want to have power. Bernie Sanders doesn't have critique of the Israeli settler colonial project. He has critique of the Netanyahu right-wing coalition. Guys, the liberal Zionists were the people that was arguing that Orthodox Jewish people should be forced to fight for the IDF because their belief is that, hey, if we got to implement apartheid and genocide, everyone has to implement apartheid and genocide. Liberal Zionists are disgusting, and the Bernie led the progressive except Palestine people, they always trying to lean on them. The Bernie people always want to lean on them. They always want to pretend that it's Netanyahu's problem. No, it's the moderate liberal wing of Zionism that is 100% okay with the genocide of the Palestinian people as well. Now, here's the moderate wing. Their argument regarding this deeply contested debate about whether Israeli soldiers can rape Palestinians, that hey, they believe that rape is wrong, and we should engage in rape. But hey, man, we should genocide them by bombing, shooting, putting bullets in the head of children. All that stuff is cool. Ethnically cleanse them. The extreme right wing, which is the people in the streets, the entire Coup party, they, as I say on this show, they believe in Jewish supremacy. This is something that people are afraid to talk about. It's not conflating Judaism with Zionism. That's not what it is at all. We got to understand the root cause of their ideology, which causes this society to be so sick. In the Talmud, the religious book, they believe that Jewish people are they are a God-chosen people, and they have the right to do anything they want to non-Jews, even if it means rape. That's why the chief IDF rabbi permits rape in wartime, because their ideology is that anyone who is enemies of the Jews, anyone who's at war with the Jews, is not even human, and they deserve to be raped by Jewish people. There was sick rabbis that I heard said that any enemies of the Jewish people would be privileged to be raped by a Jewish man. These are the most extreme, and these are the fascists that run Israel right now. That's the Coup party. That's honestly what they believe. Yeah, Israeli politicians that was literally defending rape. They had a big debate, and one of them was just like, man, there's raping in Palestinian prisoners is permissible.
חיילים ששמרו על, אני לא יודע אם יודעים, אבל יש אירוע כרגע בשדה תימן, שמשטרה צבאית הגיעו לעצור חיילים ששמרו על מחבלי נוח'בה, והחיילים בשדה תימן, מתקן מעצר של מחבלי נוח'בה, ומשטרה צבאית שם הגיעה לעצור כמה לוחמים שם, שכנראה בגלל איזה שהם טענות של יחס למחבלי נוח'בה, ויש שם אירוע של התבצרות וכולי. הטרלול שהמדינה שלנו נכנסת אליו סביב הסיפור הזה הוא מטורף, וצריך להפסיק אותו, ואני חושב שצריך פה לתת דוגמה אישית, ואני אומר עכשיו, ואני קורא לחברי הקואליציה לעשות כמוני, אני קם, ואני יוצא מפה, ואני לא הולך להצביע יותר על שום דבר, עד שהסיפור הזה והטרלול הזה, שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב, שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אוקיי? ואני מאוד מבקש, ואני חושב שחבריי בקואליציה טוב יעשו, אם יעשו כמוני. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות.
Shut up. Everything is legitimate to do. These are the people that Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, MAGA, and the two-party duopoly say shares our values. They don't share my values. I think it's fair to say that they share the values of the West and the same liberal feminists who stand with Israel. I'm not strawmanning a goddamn person. And it should be obvious to our homies here that if you are a communist feminist, these are the people who say that capitalism is a system that is broken and leaves women disproportionately impacted by the devastating effects of capitalism compared to men. A lot of communist feminists, they say that women need to abolish capitalism because they're the ones who are victimized the most. And I have no criticism of that take, personally. So if that's your version of feminism, I'm obviously not talking about you. But that's the minority of feminists. In the West, I should say, in the West, to be clear. I don't want to reduce the global majority. But if I want to be specific, when you ask the feminists in the United States and UK, that is a drastic minority. So I don't even feel the need to qualify that. If you're a base anti-capitalist feminist, I'm obviously not talking about you. I'm talking about every single feminist that's obviously capitalist, who think they're a capitalist, who's anti-communist, which includes feminists in both duopolies. Every single liberal feminist, every single, I would even say progressive feminist. Marianne Williamson is a Zionist, for example, a Zionist feminist. This is what Israel, a state that she believes deserves to exist, a state that she believes has the right to defend itself, I don't. Apartheid states that are occupying another state illegally do not have the right to defend themselves. And to be clear, I'm not trying to make it about Marianne. I see people roasting already. I'm just using her as an example. There's no beef. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm just saying the progressive Palestine left, the people who still like, I believe in the two-state solution, even though Israel have fucking rape death camps, those people I don't consider on my team. I'm just giving you guys an example of why I don't. This feminism garbage of the West, and I'm saying it because I care about my community and allies of my community. I don't care if people cope and conceive. I thought I was going to start problems on Twitter. I did not. Because I said, if you're black and brown, you need to decolonize your mind and reject liberalism the way I have. This Western liberal feminist ideology is our enemy. It does not serve us. It is used to serve imperialism. And only people who repeat and continue to support that ideology are the liberals who think they're socialists. And I talk about this with Jimmy on the show when we talk about what the left in the United States. And there are a lot of people who think being a socialist is adopting liberal Democrat cultural war issues, but making it sound spicy. And I'm talking about like the Anna Kasparians and Emma Vigeland. These are the people who think they're socialists. The Nina Turners. Nina Turner thinks she's a socialist, but she supported NATO. No more pretending that these people are the best that we have. They are our active enemies. These are the same people who believe that we should go to the Democratic Party. The same Democratic Party that is saying nothing. You got every single squad member endorse Kamala Harris. You have TYT doing videos defending Kamala Harris. You had the entire progressive left. Savvy was telling me Crystal and Kyle, who endorsed Jill Stein, is now out here shilling for Kamala Harris. Those same people who made money off the pain and the blood of the Palestinian people are about to endorse a person who calls himself a feminist who has said a goddamn thing about this. They now finally repeating on this. CNN and New York Times, who Mediaite ranked as way more reliable than us. Remember, Mediaite ranked RBN the most far left extreme media outlet in the world or in the country. I reported on Palestinian being raped in the torture camps months ago. I reported on this story beginning of this year. Maybe I got to search my tweets to confirm, but it was like January, February. I was tweeting about the concentration camps. Remember when I gave my speech at KU with Jill Stein, that was a month ago. And I was talking about the concentration camps. The same camps I would bring up and liberal Biden supporters would deny them. So now we are literally like 8 to 9 months after I reported on this, after I did hotspots on this, after RBN covered the mass rape death camps, CNN and New York Times are just now getting to it. They're just now getting to it. And why? This is the most disgusting form of racism that is prevalent in liberal society. Because why is CNN and New York Times reporting on this now? Because they have Israeli sources. They have Israeli whistleblowers. My sources was on the ground, anti-imperialist journalists, what Palestinians was sharing with us. You guys notice how they never criticize Israel for anything? They never believe any crime that Israel commits if a Palestinian says that Israel did it? Why does it take Israeli whistleblowers for you motherfuckers to acknowledge this prison torture camp that was exposed by Palestinians months ago? Why America's like, oh no, that's Palestinians. You know they liars. This is the liberal wing of Zionism, my friends. They don't believe any of these stories until it comes from Israel. They always ignore the stories that the Palestinians tell. The Palestinians was telling you guys that UNRWA wasn't part of Hamas. It was the Palestinians that said that UNRWA is our lifeline. You can't cut aid to UNRWA. But the West, including the Democratic Party and the Biden administration, believe the lying Israeli scum. The media repeated false lies made by the lying Israeli scum because they view Palestinians as less than human. They view Palestinians. Oh shit! I found it. I'm sorry. This is what I was looking for earlier. I'm glad I have it. I was mad that I thought I didn't have. Forgot to save it. This paper is 9 years old. This is what Adam tweeted out 9 years ago. As feminists or Zionists, because they say that Zionism is a liberation movement, even though it's rooted in British imperialism, that's inherently doesn't make sense. But feminists, the Elizabeth Warrens, the people who say they support feminists like Bernie Sanders, they support the state of Israel when you had a paper that is 9 years old that exposed the sexual torture of Palestinian men by Israeli authorities. I've seen videos of Palestinian men from 10, 15 years ago coming out talking about the torture and abuse that Israel put them through. Why do you guys think this has been my number one issue since day one? I am not a Johnny come lately. There's a reason why I can carry live streams. I can have Palestinian roundtables. I can have scholars from around the world because I'm not one of the people that cover this on October 8th. Anyone who's been paying attention to this story know that Israel is a genocidal state that projected their rape culture on the Palestinians. And John, welcome. I see you in the back. I'm going to introduce you here very soon. We have amazing guest from Beijing Review, John Payne, that will be joining us. But 9 years ago, here's a paper that described the sexual torture of Palestinian men by Israeli authorities. But people are now acting dumb. Isn't it funny how, quote unquote, independent media, that we are the ones that the corporate media says is not trustworthy, right? Isn't it funny that me, a college dropout, just a dumb Midwestern country boy, was telling you guys this story way before the corporate media? You got people that went to school for a journalism degree. They got masters in journalism, not breaking a goddamn story, not educating a goddamn person. I'm a college dropout. RBN, we are a network of workers, and we are running laps around the corporate media because CNN and the New York Times is just now discovering this story. And then I'll be amiss to not bring this up. Look at how the corporate media is covering the story that is undeniable now. So when they were talking about rapes, Russian rapes in Ukraine, if you read the stories in Ukraine, if you read the stories, the propaganda about October 7th, it'll be rape, 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 rape here, rape there, rape, rape, rape. The entire paragraph, this rape here, rape there, rape everywhere, rape over here, rape over here. But when they talk about this story, where you had a systemic evidence of rape, greatly detailed by whistleblowers confirmed, you notice what word is missing in this headline by the New York Times? Israeli soldiers are detained for questioning in the suspected abuse of a Palestinian prisoner. Now, you notice how no rape, this is the soft language. And this will be my last point. I will introduce my guest here very soon on his last point. The reason why it was obvious to tell that the lies about Hamas committing mass rape and the people who deny that Israel commit sexual crimes. The reason why I see through this is because I understand the concepts of imperialism. I understand how colonialism works. I understand how resistance fighters work. When you are someone fighting against a colonial occupying power, when you are not the person who are dominant, who's in control, who is the occupier, you can't rape. Where can you rape? You constantly on the back foot. You're fighting for your liberation. There are no timeouts for you to rape. You know who can rape? The people who can rape are the occupiers, the people who have control. You got control of the area. You have bases. You have a mass authority. For example, October 7th was a fast operation. There is no long-term control. When you're an occupier, when you are colonizing the people, you're in control. There is no time restraints. You're occupying the people. When you're in a position of occupation, that puts you in a position where you can engage in mass rape. Claiming that people are engaged in mass rape during October 7th, where hundreds of Hamas soldiers are being killed, during a high-pressure situation where you can die at a moment's notice, like hundreds of Hamas fighters, that's illogical. And we know that because they have no evidence. There are no police reports or anything about that. So I'll check the chat. I'm gonna get my guests in here soon. I know we have super chat, and I'm gonna continue this story. I know I want to get my guests in here. Thank you for the super chat, Mark. This colonial racism is suffocating. Absolutely. That's how they are able to justify the apartheid state of Israel. And there's no other way to rationalize it. And it's consistent when you look at the people who brutally defend the apartheid state of Israel. The people who defend this are the people who benefit from colonialism. The people who have ancestors who benefit from colonialism, people who are sympathetic to colonialism, they side with Israel. Meanwhile, victims of colonialism, Black, brown people, that's why the global majority always been pro-Palestine. The West is just now catching up. The West is just now catching up. The global majority being pro-Palestine. The only thing that kept Israel a legitimate state is the veto power of the West. Because when you look at the global South, when you look at Africa, when you look at South America, they are victims of colonialism. While the Western powers who got rich, people family got rich, they are more sympathetic to the Israeli state. But I think we got John Paying back, so I'm going to introduce my guest, who is an amazing journalist who worked for the Beijing Review. Thank you for joining us on RBN, John Paying.
Hi there. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time
your channel.
This is the first time we got to chat. Follow your account. I love anyone who report on the crimes of the U.S. empire, telling the truth about the realities of the geopolitical world stage. And I love to just talk to people from different backgrounds, especially people who got a lot of experience in China. Who I'm very impressed by China. So I'm gonna ask you about that here very soon. But I was covering during my intro. I know my intro went a little bit long.
That's great.
I was covering the abuse that Israel put Palestinian prisoners through. So I want to get your reaction to this story that is shattering the consciousness of humanity right now. The systemic abuse of Palestinians by Israel. I want to pass to you, John. Thank you for joining our show. Any thoughts?
Thank you. Of course, I have to say I don't actually work for Beijing Review, but I write for them quite regularly. Okay. Yeah, I'm based in Hangzhou in China, here in China. I moved here only late last year. Before that, I was in the US for about 7 years. So yeah, we have lots to talk about. I was in the US since about 2016 when Trump came in. So I've seen the whole cycle. But yeah, you wanted to talk about what's happening in Palestine.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I want to get your reaction and your general response to the campaign that Israel been waging against the Palestinians, especially on the eve of this devastating story that been exposing the concentration camps. You had the ICJ that put the arrest warrant on Benjamin Netanyahu. I want to get your general thoughts, and I can set some more segments for us to do. Any thoughts, John?
I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm not usually asked about this, but it's just so large an issue that we really do need to talk about it. I normally write and speak about Southeast Asia and about China. I'm from Southeast Asia. I'm from Malaysia in Southeast Asia, and I presently live in China. But this issue, the Palestinian issue, is a global issue. It's an issue for all of us, and just a very personal experience of it. I feel extremely revealing of the nature of power. I heard you speaking so eloquently a while ago about colonialism, about the experience of it. And you did mention that people from the rest of the world, from the global south, are very much more aware of it. Well, we certainly are. Whether, as a person from Malaysia, which was a British colony, actually almost all of Southeast Asia was colonized. That's one of the things that everyone in this region of about 600 million people shares. And China, while not completely colonized, was actually the era that people call the so-called century of humiliation. It sounds a little bit strange in English, but it really was a terrible period. Every Western power, from Japan to France, to Britain, to the US, had a hand, was involved in the US. They took their separate bits. It was like being colonized by 8 powers. It's like the G7 of today. So, and the consequence of that was a terrible, terrible century in which, tens of millions died. In World War II alone, more than 20 million, maybe about 25 million people died. It was, personally as well, I wouldn't have grown up I wouldn't have been born in Malaysia if not for this. The reason my grandfather moved from China was because of the disruption caused by this. So every one of us has had our lives marked by this. Palestine is just an amazing moment in which you see revealed, the mask is off really, of colonialism, and in particular of this really vicious form of it, settler colonialism. You couldn't have a clearer demonstration of the nature of it and of the West's complicity in it. Not just complicity, but full support. It's really quite something. So you are told that, well, this is behind us. What are you guys always complaining about? You third world people, right? You're always complaining about colonialism that is past. Well, you are seeing it live here in the most vicious form. If you missed out on the colonization of North America, for example, there you have it. This is what it looks like to slaughter the natives, eliminate them, replace them, and take their land. If you are Malaysian and you understand what it means to be subjugated, your people understand what it means to have an outside power come in, particularly a Western power interfere in your country, well, there you have it. But the open nature of it, the live stream nature of it, I'm not, of course, the only person to note this, is just unbelievable. Yeah. So it's truly a mask off moment. No matter what the Israelis do, what the Zionists do, they still get this support. And of course, the hypocrisy of the West that we talk about all the time is exposed. So it has, it really does have quite an impact. It's the final unveiling. We're at a period in which I think if you look at Southeast Asia, you look at Asia, Africa as well, you had after the Second World War a period of decolonization, so-called, of independence movements, these had a great effect on the US as well. The whole 60s sort of civil rights movement was inspired by decolonization in Africa, for example, right? So, and similarly, there was this vast worldwide movement for liberation, for independence, but it became really clear quite early on that that was not enough. You know, third world leaders from Kwame Nkrumah to Sukarno of Indonesia spoke of neocolonialism. People understood that it's nominal independence is not enough. You still have your a world order that is dominated by the West through various means that I'm sure your viewers, your community is well aware of. But we're coming to the end of that whole period, and it seems as if you have this final terrific battle or death rattle, right, of the colonial empire. And every disgusting, every ugly thing about colonialism seems to be emerging again and receiving open support from the West. Sometimes I sit down, I just can't believe it.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's right? Extremely wild. And there were so many great things said there, because we live in this mass genocidal psychosis in the West.
Yeah.
There's always an obsession with conflict. Always psychosis we got bomb this.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, John? Feel free, John, if you want to chime in.
No, I'm just chiming in on you. It is a kind of psychosis. It requires a type of madness to deny this, to have these, you know, the word double standards. It's just no longer it's no longer adequate, is it? To describe this. Hypocrisy is no longer adequate. What is it that makes it so easy to dehumanize the Palestinians? Well, it's the same thing that made it so easy to dehumanize colored people. It's the same racial order that was necessary for the maintenance of empire. So we thought this had gone away. You know, my background is very different from yours, for example, in the States. I didn't grow up in the US, although I spent many years of my adult life there. And you would think, well, you know, where is our solidarity? What connects us? Well, this is one of the things that connects us. Of course, the West, the US, is the metropole now, the center of this, and is completely unable to come to terms with that. But of course, the oppressed people, workers, you know, Black people understand this. You know, when I was living in the US and at one point even teaching there, I was in New York, in the New York State, and I had these students. It was the Black students who understood, actually, straight away, right? Without any BS. Sometimes they'll just say, oh, yeah, what is going on here? Okay. And that perspectival thing, that's really, really important. And it's a huge difference. That's why I love speaking with, you know, I enjoy speaking with you here and connecting with your community.
Yeah, that's why I've been calling for, and I'm glad to see there's a lot of work done on this, a complete international anti-imperialist coalition. That's why you're starting to see BRICS expands, pushing de-dollarization. You're starting to see the world wake up to this. And that's why I'm having many people like yourself on meeting and talking to for the first time. I spoke to many reporters from China, from Russia, from all different countries, see this unified view of multipolarity and ending the United States empire. Because that would be, and it's something that's kind of sad to say, but it is a unifier for all of our people. There was extreme anti-Blackness in multiple communities, but fighting against this colonial occupier and seeing that we have a common enemy and trying to fix this problem, something that can unite us all. And I am starting to see this work starting to materialize. Are you seeing the same thing, John?
Absolutely. You know, imperialism as a category, right? Colonialism as a category of analysis for making sense of our reality, does not come naturally to a lot of people anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm old enough to have lived through I think the whole 90s era, especially post 91, the fall of the Soviet Union, and this era, this glorious day of neoliberal sort of global and universal neoliberal solution, right, to everything, the end of history, as everyone knows. That discourse of colonialism, of imperialism, dropped out in the global South as well. We all got neoliberalized to some extent. Everybody was, including people in China, thought, okay, let's just globalize. Let's develop on these terms. China never abandoned its socialism, its communism. Okay, we can talk about that at some point. But saw the market as a way to tap these energies, important productive forces, for development, for the development of their people. And so for a while there, we didn't use that analysis. And a lot of people educated in certain ways, for example, I did, I studied economics, for example. So you have other frames of analysis, and you seem, okay, let's talk about developing people, opportunity, and so on. And you're caught in a kind of liberal discourse, and you think maybe that's good enough. You can compromise, and that's good enough. You can proceed on that basis. Well, you can't today. What's really amazing, and it happened only quite recently in the last 4 or 5 years, where middle of the road people, fairly mainstream people, right, people involved in business, people you don't think of as lefties, in Asia, in the rest of the world, they start to need to talk about this.
Interesting.
You know what I'm trying to say? I've done all kinds. I've worked in government. I've worked in consulting, right? I have worked for McKinsey. These are not circles with a lot of, lefties, right? These are not workers' circles, right? I've been in banking, but it isn't just myself, but all my peers, even people you might think of as capitalists, business people, developers, property developers, they're talking like this now. Because how else can you make sense of this brutality?
Very interesting.
Right in your face in Palestine. So that has come for people in Asia, for people of Chinese extraction like myself. This is not, that has come this is just the latest dose. You had this turn against China and against Asia, really, that started about 10, 15 years ago under the Obama administration, where they overtly went from engagement with China to so-called containment, where they started to identify China as the adversary. This didn't begin with Trump, by the way. It began under Obama, Hillary, right? Like many things. Smooth Barack.
Yeah, we often say on the RBN that major U.S. foreign policy doesn't change between presidents.
No, it doesn't change. And the idea was always there. The idea was always there. That's right. This wasn't there. The idea to contain China, we need to turn to China. It was just a matter of time. After they fixed the Soviet Union and did what they did to Russia, which is tragic, they were eventually going to turn to China, but were distracted by about the wars in the Middle East, by the so-called war on terror. They had to finish off a few medium-sized countries before they could then turn to China. But so the last few years have been quite an education for very ordinary middle-of-the-road people, I'd say, in Asia.
That's very interesting.
And even for people in China who had stopped talking in straight out, Marxist or Maoist language. They thought they could make do with a kind of turn to sort of a global, let's say a one world under markets, under democracy. So then you had in the 80s a whole kind of a generation of Chinese liberals, for example. They're all sitting here quietly now. I mean, what do you say if you were a lib?
That's extremely
right?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting. And I still gotta get to another story because I don't want to clickbait my audience. But at this point, I'm just very interested in picking your brain because of your experience. And one thing I want to ask you, and guys, trust me, we're gonna get to Venezuela. That's the main story of the day. But I want to ask you this question because you kind of brought it up too. I've been discussing the system in China. There have been a lot of conversations about the system in China. I debated friends over it. And I'm very impressed. I said before, I'm a communist. I'm very impressed with what I see from China. And I'm talking about their ability to lift people out of poverty. I see what they did with housing, which led the average rent for Chinese workers to be around $500. And they make around $49,000 a year in U.S. salary. I'm seeing the way they develop the infrastructure, the way they nationalize their banks. And I'm seeing socialist characteristics. But there are also a lot of people in the West, and I'm trying to figure out what's true because a lot of people are misinformed. There's information going here, information going there. But since you got what knowledge, I'm interested in asking you directly.
Yes.
For the people who criticize China for being too capitalist, are they correct? Like, how will you describe the Chinese model? Will you describe it as socialist? Because there are a lot of people on the left, especially in the United States, that say, "Oh, we shouldn't be trustworthy in China. They're actually secretly capitalist." And I would love to hear your expertise on that.
Okay, secretly my ass. I mean, you can complain about China being having gone too far towards capitalism, but you cannot doubt its commitment to socialism, to communism. In fact, this is to understand that in China, communism is the ideal. It remains the goal. They talk about it in their annual meetings. It's governed by the Communist Party. So it remains the goal. And Chinese people understand this, that they haven't achieved communism.
Yeah.
They're on the road to the full equality of or to the state you might call communism, right? And you don't have to be a communist to sort of to see the good that they're doing, the benefit to society of lifting 800 million people out of poverty. It's almost ridiculous to talk about it, to even question that. But yes, there have been periods. What has happened is an unleashing of market forces. This was done quite deliberately from the 80s onwards. And China's policy is pragmatic. You use these forces because they are enormously productive, but you remain in control. And you moderate the effects of it. There are key things which the Chinese government are not going to let to abandon control of. For example, the financial sector. The banks are all government banks. Banking, and this is an important thing, is not, every one of the major banks is and they're very large. These are the largest banks in the world, are state-owned. The state-owned enterprises continue to play a huge role in this. Infrastructure is developed by state-owned enterprises. You could not have built 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in something like 15 years with private sector market only. You just can't do that. So there's a kind of balance here and a pragmatism. But there have been times, and I think people here will admit it as well, where the market forces thing went too far. And we're in a period of correction, it's fair to say, I think, under President Xi Jinping. So for the last 10, 15 years, it began before him, you have a kind of correction, and this socialism has become a stronger, the equality equity, quality of life, these things have become much more important.
Yeah, as a
Yeah, you had a period of go capitalism. One felt that in the cities, in certain places, and it was a deliberate experiment because it started with certain special areas, special economic zones, such as Shenzhen, which grew from literally something like a fishing village to a city of more than 10 million people in something like 15 years, 10 or 15 years, and is one of the richest cities in the world now.
Yeah.
So and is the hub of and the entire area is the industrial or tech capital of the planet in terms of in technology engineering. So these were important to harness for the state and for the people. So there wouldn't be these resources if not for the opening to the market. But it's very much a control process, and you see the progress towards socialism. So it's no longer just growth right now. And the latest sector to be tamed is housing. The one sector that they allowed to run free was housing, was property, and the government has deliberately allowed that market to come down, take the air out of it. They announced it about more than 10 years ago that this is too much. As the president said, right? Houses are for living in, not speculating. So they allowed that market to crash, basically, to move resources, to move capital to technology and to productive uses. And of course, there's been a lot of overbuilt, property that's overbuilt. Well, they're having the local governments buy those up and turning them into social housing.
There are a lot of I find this very interesting because always trying to get the truth around China's system. And I appreciate the explanation. As a Marxist, as a socialist, my critique of capitalism is mostly that it's a chaotic system that is meant to destabilize by design.
It is.
That is how profit is developed. For example, just to give you the way I'm trying to frame my thoughts, and we get back on top here soon, but it's a very interesting conversation. The central planning model of capitalism thrive on chaos. For example, in the United States, we have a insurance model where that led to massive medical debt.
Tell me about it.
Sky high medical debt, people going bankrupt, people who can't have healthcare. And it doesn't even make sense because there are countries that, essentially every country that provide healthcare to their people, but they do it cheaper than we do. So we spend more money despite not covering people. That's inherently a chaotic system.
Yeah, it cost me like $2. Okay? I don't even have insurance here. It cost me like $2 to see the doctor. Okay.
Wow. Right? I haven't seen the doctor.
If I get administered medicine, I mean, it's going to be $5, $10 at most. I have procedures done. I have all kinds of things, right? You might get an X-ray or something like that. It's not going to break the bank, and that's without insurance, right? So, and the quality of care here is just amazing. You get seen. You go there, you get seen. It's high tech. I mean, if actually Americans with their experience of healthcare were to come here and were to have this experience, they'd be thoroughly radicalized.
It's crazy. I haven't seen a doctor in over 10 years. Even 10 years since I've been to a doctor.
I mean, I was terrified to go, to get sick or whatever, go and see a doctor, right? When I was a student, sometimes when I was in the US, you don't know what's going to happen to you, right? You're more afraid of the bill they're going to hit you with. But look, the key thing is that the government is in charge of the economy. It's not capitalists who run the place. It's the Communist Party. And if you have these guys threaten to become oligarchs, like you have in the West, they are cut down to size.
Yeah, real
So
quick.
you have all these, FT, Bloomberg complaining about, such and such big boy in tech. He's suddenly no longer a big boy, or he's suddenly hauled up. Or you have somebody who's corrupt, they get sent to jail, or they get a death sentence or something like that if they've stolen, millions. So the government doesn't mess around, and it's very clear that it's the party, not money, that's in charge, and that is not usual. Yeah. We really needed to get that under control. Corruption was getting out of hand by the end of the 2010s. This is the period the Americans loved, by the way. Or this is the China they loved. When you had a kind of more rampant capitalism and a lot of corruption from about the 10 years from about 2000 onward, when in some places things were getting a bit out of hand. But in the last 10 years, and this is my personal view, I think they have really a major effort of the present administration is to bring that under control. Yeah. First, by disciplining the Communist Party, by eliminating, it was a massive battle, hundreds of thousands of people charged and convicted of corruption. Okay, so that was the big cleanup.
Yeah, and I really wish Americans, and we can get on Venezuela after this. I really wish Americans understood that the root of their distrust of government is rooted in the fact that capitalists have more power than the government.
Yeah.
The reason why
who picked Kamala Harris? Who told Joe Biden to step down? Who?
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally opaque. You talk about China being opaque. In China, we know there's a Politburo, the standing committee, you have the central committee of the party. It's complex to people outside, or if you're hostile and you don't want to understand the system of somebody else's system of government, which, by the way, takes care of 1.4 billion people. This is more than the US and Europe and the entire Western world put together, the whole G7 put together as one country. How do you govern? How do you take care of that number of people, hold them together, etc., right, under intense pressure from the Western world, from the capitalist world, right, to dismantle you, to undermine you, etc., and to surround you? So how do you do all these things? You have to have a really good system of government. You have to have effective government. You have to have cohesive government. And you can't run it with a sort of jackbooted thuggery. You simply can't. The place is just too big for that. China has had many, many periods in which a lot of historical experience of warlordism and of being fragmented.
Yeah, and you know how
it's not always been just one happy country, one cohesive country as it is now.
You want to know, and you mentioned how China is taking care of its massive population. You want to know what happens in a system that is a failed system? When you have a failed system, instead of addressing poverty, instead of addressing homelessness, you create a police state instead.
Yeah.
Instead of actually solving problems, you create a police state to quell discontent. So China, despite having 3 to 4 times more people, I think it's 4 times more people than us.
Yep.
You guys have 4 times more people than us, but less people in prison.
Yep.
But
with less
Americans think
arable land. Yep. Fewer resources, far fewer resources, without an empire. This is a country that developed, that reached its present state, unlike any other industrialized country of the West, right, without colonialism.
Yep.
Even Japan, that everybody thinks is such a great example. Well, they did it by following the Western example. They took massive colonies. They took a huge chunk of China, Korea, and then eventually much of Southeast Asia. So that was the model. It was always built into that model. And when they told you, oh, look, here's this ladder, and if you do this and that, you do sort of outsourced manufacturing for us, you'll eventually get somewhere. Well, that ladder never led anywhere. I was involved in development work. I was involved, whether in government, I used to work in government, or in business. It was a ladder that led nowhere. Imagine if you're from the third world and they're telling you, well, here we are up here. And if you're a good boy, you keep your head down and you obey, you're going to go, and you work hard, you're going to get, no, you're never going to get there. Between countries as between people, your ladder ends here in a place of subjugation. And if you dare take another step up, we will beat you down, right? We will cut you down. Now, finally, for people who complain about China being capitalist, you have one country that has broken the ceiling and made it possible for everyone else. And the final thing about, how it feels to live in China and to live in a socialist society, there's no question at all that this is a party of workers and peasants, that it represents them and has their interests at top, that are primary. So right now, there's we could go into it another time, but it's working. The big effort now is equality between, to equalize the outcomes between the fast-growing rich areas in the coast, on the eastern coast, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, those places, or Hangzhou, where I am, and the west of China. So there's all that inequality. They're going after it, okay? And you're seeing the results. They're not chasing GDP figures anymore, right? Yeah. That's why China is supposed to be collapsing. If you're on X or whatever, you're Bloomberg. Every year we're collapsing, right? Just keep on marking the collapse while China keeps winning.
Jordan Chang, famous right-wing grifter, anti-China critic, has been saying that China is going to collapse for 20 years now.
He's made a career.
For 20 years, he said China's going to collapse. Any day now, bro.
Yeah.
Any day now. Another great point you made was how China lifted so many people out of poverty despite not engaging in colonialism, which is why I tease Americans, especially Americans whose minds are still colonized. I like to tease my fellow poor white brothers and sisters because our country, the United States, is a country that stole trillions from Africa, trillions from the global South, and you're still poor. Imagine
exactly
you live in the empire.
How are you so poor? Yeah.
They stole trillions of wealth.
GDP of what, 60,000? Yeah. Chinese people have about 1/3, a quarter to a third of per capita US income. And these people are already terrified of the Chinese. There's no way they're going to allow China to, the real issue the West has, of the US has with China, is its existence, is the fact that it's succeeding. If Chinese GDP only went up to half of the US, China would be several times the size of the US, right? So they can't allow this. You can't allow the prosperity of people. So this is a very baseline issue here. Are people in the global South allowed to have a level of income that is even comparable to that in the West? Or must they always remain poor and subjugated, or else, we don't have rules-based order?
Well said. And I could continue this easily, but I'm gonna just so I'm not clickbaiting my audience. The main story of the day is Venezuela, so I'm gonna get to that. I gotta have you back on because I honestly can pick your brain on this stuff forever, man. But I gotta make sure that I cover the main story that I know a lot of people clicked on. It with the thumbnail and the title. So I could start so many ways, man. Because guys, this is glorious. I expected this because Nicolas Maduro had the support of the Venezuelan people. But every time there's a Venezuelan election, they spread lies and spread fake news about how Maduro is rigging the election. And I always loved this time because this is why you pay attention to foreign policy as an American, because liberals right now are pretending that Trump is the unique threat to democracy. Liberals are pretending that they are the ones who defend democracy, and they find January 6th to be the worst thing that ever happened in American history. You know, the quote-unquote coup with no guns, without military support, no foreign assistance. You know, that coup they say is the worst thing ever. They pretend they're here to defend democracy as they cheer something that is 1,000 times worse than January 6th. This is the CIA teaming with the opposition party. This is a theme you see all the time in South America, where you have the most extreme elements of the society that is willing to sell their people out in order to get power. They don't care if the people going to suffer. They want power. And the number one way you know that the opposition, the Juan Guaidos, the people who are against Maduro do not care about the Venezuela people is because they often call for sanctions. Like, the fuck? How are you going to say you care about your people while supporting sanctions on your people? And I'm starting here first for a reason. I can start it so many different ways. I'm showing why the West loves the Venezuela opposition. And for the sake of time, I explained the history of the class struggle in the global South. They call it the Cold War in America. It was the global class war, the capitalist response to the global working class rise. And that's what they call the Cold War. And when you study the Cold War in South America, you see very similar characteristics. Like in Argentina, you will see a lot of people who side with the West who have German last names, for example. When you look at the Venezuelan opposition, they tend to be very light-skinned compared to the indigenous opposition, and they tend to be capitalist. And once again, these are general characteristics. You have the ruling class that controls the media, the capitalist class who want to crush the workers of their society. And because they're extreme fascist capitalist scum who support imperialism, they're willing to team with the CIA and foreign hostile forces to accomplish this, robbing the sovereignty of their people. This here is why, even though I'm more ideologically aligned with the Venezuelan left, this concept is why you should support Maduro in Venezuela, even if you're not a crazy radical socialist like me, because the opposition side with hostile foreign powers like the CIA in order to accomplish their political will and ambition, which no one should support. Now, here is the reason why. I'm sorry, I got to add this part here, because Israel is always responsible. It always comes down to Israel at the end of the day, because this is why the West loves them. Because just like Bolsonaro in Brazil, Bolsonaro loved Israel. He used to do pilgrimage. Used to go to Israel, worship the wall. He was a big Zionist. The same way with this opposition. They are hardcore Zionists, which is why they were supported by the status quo. And here is the opposition leader, Maria Machado, saying, well, I'll let the video play for itself. Essentially, her bootlicking Israel.
Maria Corina Machado, gracias. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you, and we'll stay in touch. And I promise one day we'll have a close relationship between Venezuela and Israel. And I believe, and I can announce this, that our government will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. That will be part of our support to the state of Israel.
Are you starting to get it now, fam? And John, I'm doing a presentation, but if you want to chime in anytime, feel free to interrupt. I'm okay. I just got to do this quick presentation. But if you want to interrupt, feel free to chime in.
I just got to step in on this point.
Go ahead, John.
You know what this reminds us of? People in Asia. You know what Venezuela reminds us of? Hong Kong.
Yes.
They did this.
Yes.
They supported these right-wing thugs. There was a protest, a popular protest. There were some legitimate issues, but it soon got taken over by an extreme right-wing element that was clearly organized, supported, and also funded by external forces, shall we say, by the West, by the US. Ted Cruz showed up there, to show solidarity, people like that. Their leaders were feted in Washington, and they set people on fire too. And they set the city on fire, and people clapped and cheered. You know how visible Hong Kong is, right? It's in Asia. It's just it's the one of the largest financial centers in the world. And there they were trying to run a color revolution. So people have seen this show before. Yep. It's just so dreadfully familiar. And they also exported. We had Ukrainian right-wing guys, among the crowd. So the same thing. Why is it always the same right-wing thuggish elements? Why is Israel the world's focal point for fascism, right? And why is it always that these movements are so racist, so fascist, right? And again, pro-capital, of course.
Yeah, exactly well said. And if you study the history of colonialism, when you study the CIA, people say, Nick, how do you know this is going to happen? How can you predict this? The empire is very predictable. If anything, very predictable. They run the same playbook. It's the same thing. And I remember being American, a young, studying, aspiring leftist. The Hong Kong thing was very confusing at first. You had all the people who criticized our protests whenever we hit the street to protest our fascist police state, for example. The same people was supporting the protests in Hong Kong, and then you had the what I call the Bernie left, the progressive left, the fake social democrat left. They was a big source of my confusion because back then I didn't know how to interpret it. I was like, yo, what's going on here? And because you had the U.S. left that was siding with the right-wing elements in Hong Kong. Now there was a lot of people, there was a lot of confusion. Like, hey, you gotta stand in solidarity with these people protesting their evil government. And as I learned that, it was a color revolution. All these things are always color revolutions, and anyone who has any legitimate criticism of Iran, who lives in Iran, I wish you the best. But the protests we see in Iran, color revolutions. Like, I don't support CIA programmed attempts to change regimes. And in this video, to get back on topic, you guys see this is just another Israeli attempt to control a country, to control the minds of the world. And you had Maduro, who, surprise, surprise, very pro-Palestine. Of course he's very pro-Palestine. That every single leader in the world that is unapologetically pro-Palestine, you're going to see the coup attempts on. So this is the election day when Maduro voted. I'm sure you guys see his video if you follow Venezuela. The video of Nicolas Maduro saying free Palestine the day he voted.
Vamos a defender Palestina, presidente. Palestina. Viva Palestina libre.
Now you wonder why they want to get rid of him? You have all these frauds on the right who I've been aggressively calling out. The people who was able to see through Ukraine. An easy issue to see through. So a lot of people thought these right-wingers who saw through Ukraine are good in general in calling out the empire. These same idiots are repeating smears against Nicolas Maduro, not realizing that the reason why the establishment want to get rid of Nicolas Maduro is because he's not a puppet of the Zionist regime. Now, I'll play this clip and I'll pass to you. After I play this clip, I want you to chime in if you want to chime in, because here's Hugo Chavez, someone else we are told who's evil. Someone else who the CIA was obsessed with overthrowing. This is what he had to say on Israel. This is a 2-minute video, and I'm going to give you guys context on why the West hates the Venezuelan government. Not only because they nationalized their oil reserves, socialism, they nationalized the oil reserves instead of selling out to capitalists. That's the reason number one. Don't get twisted. But reason number 1B is the Venezuelan people often choose leaders that are anti-Israel and pro-Palestine. So I'm going to play this video, and after this, I'll pass to you, John, because I know I'm doing a long presentation. I'm sorry, I got a lot to cover. After I play this video, I'll pass it to you if you want to chime in with anything.
Nos acusa a nosotros, a mí me acusan de patrocinar el terrorismo. Son ellos los que patrocinan el terrorismo. Aprovecho para condenar de nuevo, desde el fondo de mi alma y de mis vísceras, al Estado de Israel. Maldito seas, Estado de Israel. Maldito sea, terroristas y asesinos. Y viva el pueblo palestino. Pueblo heroico, pueblo bueno. Ustedes no ven el imperio yanqui. Ustedes no ven la masacre que el Estado genocida de Israel cometió contra un grupo de pacifistas que iban llevando una carga humanitaria al pueblo palestino que está en Gaza, rodeado por todos lados por Israel. No les permiten ni agua. Masacraron a una gente ahí, ustedes lo vieron, ¿verdad? Bueno, vean ustedes Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos lo que dijo es que está preocupado. Están preocupados. Imagínense, Alcalá, Dios nos libre, que eso hubiera ocurrido en aguas venezolanas. Ya estaríamos invadidos. Tengan la seguridad que ya nos hubieran invadido. Pero no, como es Israel, se le permite de todo. Entonces, ese es un ejemplo de doble moral. El gobierno de Obama condena el terrorismo, siempre y cuando no sea cometido por ellos mismos. Ahora, fíjense ustedes, la oposición venezolana no ha dicho ni nada contra Israel. No, que Israel financia a la oposición venezolana, financia la contrarrevolución. Incluso hay grupos de terroristas israelíes del Mossad que andan detrás de mí, tratando de matarme. Tratando de matarme.
This is the person that many people in white America hate. Tell me, I remember when he died, the celebrations of white America. Now you guys see why they hate this man? This is why RFK Jr. and people who are weak on Israel are not our friends. If you don't see how the problem that Israel is on the world stage and how they enable all the coups and our imperialism, they write our foreign policy, I'm not interested in you. That's RFK Jr. in a nutshell. But John, I'm gonna pass it to you. I know this is a longer presentation, but anything you want to add? Any thoughts you have before I continue?
You know, this is again, this makes me feel old actually, because I remember Chavez, and I remember that, and I remember that hatred. You know, if you're American and you don't reflect on this, but why do you always have to have someone to hate?
Exactly.
It's Chavez, it's Gaddafi, it's Saddam Hussein, one after another. Putin,
and John,
don't
in the
you
United
start to see
States,
the pattern? It's Hitler, all over again. Do you know it's possible to grow up, to go through life? Do you know there are people in countries all over the world, actually most of the world, who go through life not having to hate a foreign leader without having any feelings, because it's none of their fucking business, okay, in the first place. Because they're not taught, because it's not essential to their societies somehow, to the ideological system they live under, to have some demon, somebody they hate. This is truly absurd. If by now people don't see this, right, I really don't know how to help them. One after another, you have these little stick figures in front of you, and then, okay, you all hate this figure. It's, in the first place, it's nothing to do with you. You don't know anything about this. Let's, ideology aside, what has it got to do with you in the first instance?
Exactly.
So this is just ridiculous. And so for Chavez, it's the same as with many leaders in the South. Every one of them, from Nelson Mandela to Mao to you have to hate them.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm considered weird in the United States by the two-party duopoly, and I would say the political mainstream. The political mainstream consider me weird. I've been blacklisted from essentially every major United States media, even independent media. Like, their giant independent media I'm blacklisted on, because they say, "Oh, why do Nick love Putin? Why does Nick love China? Why do Nick love Kim Jong-un?" I get accused of being a Russia bot. I get accused of being a sympathizer for China simply because I don't hate them. I advocate for peace. I advocate for communication, understanding, and I am considered someone who's outside the acceptable bounds of the Overton window. Why? What is my sin, my friends? My sin is I don't have a rabid hatred of Vladimir Putin. That's my sin. My sin is not having a rabid hatred of the Chinese Communist Party, of defending Nicolas Maduro. These are things that made people in the Bernie campaign uncomfortable, because Bernie Sanders, like the entirety of the Social Democrat left, continue to get it wrong to this day. The Social Democrats who claim they are anti-establishment, but they believe everything the establishment says about their enemies. Because as I was debunking this propaganda, as the real leftists were debunking this propaganda and being smeared for it, we have the quote-unquote leader of the left in the United States that would believe in CIA propaganda, calling Nicolas Maduro a vicious tyrant. Why did Bernie Sanders call Nicolas Maduro a vicious tyrant? Because he had the audacity of not being killed by his opposition and winning elections.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
the audacity to stand up, to be independent. It's always these leaders around the world who dare to stand up for their own people, who get demonized like that. Look, it's just not normal. It's not intelligent. It's not grown up to have your debates around these personal animosities or your favorites, this sort of personal politics that you're running across countries that you can't even place on a map. So you're being manipulated, and you're instantly dumbed down. How much do people know about Venezuela? How much did they know about Gaddafi before they killed him? Yeah. How much do they know about Libya, right? So this is really, really none of your business. I mean, just get used to that notion, for example. Quite before you get into the analysis, it really is none of your business. So it's part of the imperial mindset that's cultivated in everyone. And you were just told to hate this person, love that one, etc., etc. And then you make heroes as well that are convenient to the empire. So you're totally manipulated. This word terrorist that Chavez was using, it needs to be used very carefully. You start to realize, well, terrorist really means rebel.
Yes.
Your terrorist, that's the word. Yeah, the freedom fighter. Oh, that's another word that they love. Freedom fighter. Those are the terrorists that they like, so to speak, right? So who is terrorists and so on? So who are the terrorists now? Hamas? Hamas has a right to resistance.
Yes.
Okay.
I told you guys I wasn't crazy. I told you guys. Like this is mainstream knowledge around the world. But I say this, John. I tell people
the elected government of that small community. So it has a right to resistance. These are occupied people, and under international law, they have a right to resistance. So, your terrorist is somebody else's rebel and independence fighter for independence. So we've all actually in the global south been called terrorists before. So what the hell does that mean? I'm not saying the term is completely, but coming out of the mouths of these people, of these empire whores, it is meaningless. Dude, they go around the world calling people terrorists, and of course Israel really, voids the word of all meaning. If anything is terrorist, it's the behavior of the Israeli state right now. It's just brutally based on the infliction of terror, of fear as an instrument. I presume that's the definition of it, that you use terror, that you use fear, wanton killing, you strike fear in order to achieve your ends, or you just kill for the sake of killing. So we're seeing all that, and I wouldn't be human if I didn't say this.
Yeah, and I defined terrorist. I think someone who spreads terror as a means to an end is a good definition. I also said a terrorist is someone who has no red lines when combating the enemy, and that defined the United States and Israel. Madeleine Albright killed 500,000 Iraqi children. She said it was worth it. Henry Kissinger has a body count that rivals Hitler, some of the most crazy genocidal monsters in human history when you look at what he did in Cambodia, Vietnam, etc., etc. But those are the
policy. You know, dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan, right or wrong, whichever side you're on, that's deliberate, and by their own account, infliction of terror, of fear, for a political end, right? To extract surrender. The Anglo-American bombing of Germany, and the American bombing of Japan. Now, these are people on the other side. You don't have a right to murder innocents in order to do this, okay? So, you know, terror as an instrument of policy is all over the West. So, yeah, you know, spare me calling people terrorists and expecting me to shut up because, you know, you've just defined them as that you name call them and call them terrorists.
That was such well said. And this is what I've been saying on RBN for quite some time, to really think about the words we're using and decolonize our mind. Once again, I like to rib the right-wing white America because these are the people who support the Second Amendment. I'm a Marxist. I'm supporting having an armed proletariat as well. They believe that we need a gun in order to resist tyranny. So my question to them is, if we truly live in tyrannical government, which I think we do, if we ever took up arms against that government, what would they call you? A terrorist. So if you're going out here believing the propaganda about terrorists, you might as well give up your gun. Because what you're saying is, under no right do people have to resist tyranny, which is something that no one who believes in revolution, no one who believes resisting tyranny should adopt. Now, this is the last presentation that I'm going to do for today for sake of your time. And we definitely got to have you back on again. There's so much I want to talk about. I didn't even get to BRICS. I may ask a quick question on BRICS later. There's so much I wanted to cover. There was such an engaging conversation. I definitely have to bring you back. There's just one more thing I want to show you guys so I can wrap up my Venezuela comment, and then we can begin to wrap up this stream. I appreciate you being generous with your time, John. We're almost done here. I'm going to play this video of the State Department not handling the election well. Because as I explained, Nicolas Maduro is extremely popular. Well, popular enough to win the election, I say that. Because despite what the West will have you believe, despite any criticism people may have of Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan people see a leader that is resisting the United States empire and doing it quite successfully. So he has the support of the Venezuelan people. It's very obvious. Despite the propaganda that Maduro was going to win, they was already setting the stage for this coup attempt when they were saying, oh my God, polls show that Nicolas Maduro is going to get blown out. They had an American company do some bullshit exit polls with very small sampling size. And now you got entire states all around the world as quoting exit pollings coming from a United States company that selectively pick people. They're using that as a way to justify regime change. But Nicolas Maduro won, like we knew he would. And as you guys see, the State Department is not handling it well. So here's Anthony Blinken, his response to Nicolas Maduro defeating him. And now you had this attempt coup where you had paid resistance fighters that was supported by the CIA. Their shit failed. They had another failed coup. The CIA is not as good at doing this as they used to be. So the military side with Maduro and their coup failed again. Nicolas Maduro defeated the CIA again, and here's Anthony Blinken coping over it.
If my colleagues will indulge me for just 1 minute, I want to speak quickly to the elections that just took place in Venezuela. We applaud the Venezuelan people for their participation in the July 28th presidential election. We commend their courage and commitment to democracy in the face of repression and in the face of adversity. We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people. It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition and independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the detailed tabulation of votes. The international community is watching this very closely and will respond accordingly.
You guys understand, this is what they call Trump and his supporters of fascists for. This is Democrats and liberals denying election results. Isn't that what they hate Trump for? Isn't that interesting? And I'll pass it right to you, but you have this neoliberal line. I'm gonna cover this tomorrow, guys, because there's too much to cover. There's too much to cover on this. I'm gonna cover more on Venezuela tomorrow, but because I still got to cover how there's this neoliberal Western vassal state support of the coup in Venezuela. You have AMLO, thank God, who is standing in support of the Venezuela election. Here's Gabriel Boric, the quote unquote center left president of Chile that people celebrate. Remember the statement we did a long time ago when people were like, oh my God, Chile finally have a center left leader. Here he is supporting the CIA coup against Venezuela. And this is the messaging. The Maduro regime must understand that the result it publishes are difficult to believe. You have to know, difficult to believe is not evidence. And I had a viral tweet where I said, I find it hard to believe that United States Congress in the United States that has only a 13% approval rating constantly gets reelected. You tell me Nancy Pelosi gets reelected for decades? That doesn't sound believable to me. But you got to see how your believability in election is not evidence. One last thing I want to play, and I'll pass it. One last thing I want to show, and I'll wrap up here. I got a lot to cover on there. I'm gonna continue this segment tomorrow, guys, because I still got John Bolton admitting the coup. Yeah, Elon Musk that played a big part of it. God, I have so much, but I don't want to take my guest time too much. So I'm gonna cover more of this tomorrow. This is what I'm gonna end it on. So as you have all these Latin American countries that are siding with Venezuela, I need to get an update on Lula. Last time I checked, Lula is meeting with the United States State Department to release a statement, but he hasn't said anything yet. Actually something an hour ago. I gotta report on this more in detail later. Before the stream, I saw Lula is preparing a statement. This literally released while we was live. Biden and Lula, oh Jesus Christ. Lula, you motherfucker. He gets so many things right. And then just fuck. You're really siding with the State Department if I'm reading this right. Once again, I'm interpreting this live. I'm paused. So Biden and Lula urged Venezuela authorities to release detailed presidential election voting data. God damn it, Lula. So this is him joining the Western-backed coup of Venezuela, which is extremely disappointing because, as I said earlier, AMLO is getting this issue right. I'm pulling this up last second. Let me look up AMLO because I just read this earlier. Here it is. Mexico will recognize election results. So thank God AMLO got this right, but Lula failed in a massive way. Last thing I'm going to share, and I'll pass to you, John, for last thoughts. I had a segment for MSNBC I was going to show. I cut it for a second time. But essentially, MSNBC, corporate media, they were saying, oh, man, we want to respect the elections, but we got to wait till we see evidence. We got to wait to see what the observers say. We already, just like Jimmy Carter, who his organization affirmed the last few Venezuelan elections were clean. Now you have the National Lawyers Guild, election observers, praise the fairness, transparency of Venezuela's election process and condemn the U.S.-backed opposition refusal to accept the outcome of the democratic election. So, John, I apologize for that long presentation. A lot to cover. Nico House, my hotspot brother, he has a great video I saw he released on Venezuela where he talks about the Venezuela election system. I am not saying it's perfect. I am telling you guys it's 1,000 times better than ours, though. So, I got a lot more to cover. I'll be back tomorrow. This is already going a little bit longer than I planned. John, anything else you want to add?
No, I really enjoy speaking with you. Thank you for inviting me here. But next time, warn me before you put Blinken on, talking about democracy and human rights. That was so cringe. That was he has zero credibility talking about this. It's just ridiculous. He is in no position to talk about human rights or democracy to anyone. As a good friend of mine said, every time these US officials talk about democracy to you, open their mouths and preach about democracy or human rights, throw a shoe at them. This is, just stop. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. You're making my skin crawl. Just don't do it.
And there's people that actually vote for these people in our country. It's wild, man.
No, please, you just, almost, we had a president, a former president almost assassinated under really, really dubious circumstances. You have a kind of almost coup of the sitting president and selection of his successor without going through any sort of democratic process. You want to talk to us about democracy? Please go home. Stop it. It's just, you're embarrassing me. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment listening to you. So, I mean, you just don't do it.
So I want to ask you one more question. I'm gonna let Zoe ask you a question because I do want to ask you about BRICS. Not a segment. I just want to ask your thoughts about it. The push for de-dollarization. We've seen BRICS expand massively. I believe they have a summit next month. I got to check. But I believe they have a summit coming up. I want to get your thoughts on BRICS and de-dollarization. China obviously playing a big role in this. You had the United States sanctions on Russia, on Ukraine, that helped drive Russia and China closer together. And it also served as a wake-up call to nations around the world that if they make any foreign policy decision the United States don't agree with, they may be cut off from SWIFT and other severe financial penalties. So that's why BRIC is expanding. But I want to get your perspective on it. What are your thoughts on BRICS? Because we see them pushing hard for de-dollarization. Do you see there a lot of potential?
So let me relate this back to other themes. Let me relate it back to Venezuela. Countries like Venezuela, Iran, whose crime is being too independent, right? Or in Venezuela's case, having a lot of oil and not bowing to Uncle Sam. Now, those people who complain about China and capitalism and being having a powerful economy, they don't look at that in the global geopolitical context. The issue is really, has always been and continues to be global order. Whether you want to live under a present order, which is still colonial in its structure, centered on a Western power. It used to be these European great powers. Now it's the US, as in the lead, but it's still very, very much a Western one. China, the rise of China has broken the monopoly of the West. You can't look at Venezuela. It wouldn't survive. Neither Iran nor Venezuela now are countries that you can just sanction. They'll do fine. Because, China will continue to trade with them. And the rest of the global South will do that. You can't do what the US is very fond of doing with these South American countries, a capital strike. Just pull out all your investments and they collapse. Well, go ahead, pull out all your investments, like what you did to Russia. So what's really frustrating them is this rise of a multipolar order. What's really frustrating them is the loss of this great instrument of colonial control, right? The financial system. Sanctions just don't work like they used to, and it's very frustrating to them. They just can't handle it. And Venezuela will survive. These coups, they're less and less effective. So that's why this de-dollarization is a part of that. We probably need a whole episode to talk about the influence of the US dollar, and that's the chief means. You spoke earlier about them. They're extracting trillions from Africa, and in Britain did enormous extraction enterprise with 45 trillion on one count with India over the period of its colonization. Now, how is that possible today? How is it still going on? The dollar system. This is through the dollar system, and you could do a whole episode on that. But de-dollarization, it's freeing the rest of the world from this kind of control. Not from two things. One is the extraction inherent in it, but the other also the control that it has on your country. and the ability to just turn off the switch when they feel like it. So that's gone, actually. It's already multipolar. It's becoming that. And Malaysia, has just been the latest country to apply for BRICS. And this is really significant because, Southeast Asia is 600 million people, 10 countries in ASEAN. One by one, you're going to see them apply to join BRICS as well, and other such organizations. So it's a very, very interesting time. And if people want to understand national liberation movements, whether it's in the United States or in Venezuela, and the liberation of the oppressed in particular countries, you need to understand it also against the background of what's happening towards a multipolar order, because it always has had that international dimension. Someone asked the status of my multipolar peace project with Arnaud and others like Warwick Powell on here. It's worked out. It's going really well. It's just and you guys are in it too. It's just content creators and and channels throughout, just being in touch with one another, right? To help each other along, to sometimes share content, share a platform, but to push on the theme of multipolarity and peace. That we can have, that the way to peace and also to liberation is through multipolarity. So that's the answer to the question that's before us.
And it was great to have you on. We definitely got to have you back on again, because I told you guys in this new era, that's our main drive. That's my main drive.
No Blinken no segments without that damn you, like,
it's painful. It's painful. But this is the main goal of the new era, to build this coalition, to build this international anti-imperialist movement, anti-genocide movement, this international leftist movement, this movement to challenge empire. So it's great to have you on. I would definitely need, because there's still so much we could have covered. Like I would love to hear more about your position. Talk more about China, Malaysia as well. Malaysia is a country I gotta read more about. So I would love to pick your mind on that. So much conversation to have. I see one last super chat that came in. I did be last super chat I read. I appreciate everyone who left super chats. I just saw this one came in, so I'll read it. Next time it'll be interesting if Mr. Payne could talk about how the Chinese people elect their political representatives. But we could have. I had to cut myself off because we could have ripped forever about that. I had so many questions. We definitely gotta have you back on. Mostly unknown in the West, I think. Thanks for the fantastic conversation. Absolutely. Is there anything you want to plug, John?
No,
anything
where
they can find you?
Just the multipolar peace project. Look out for it. We hashtag it. We have a website, multipolarpeace.com. So just go there, and there's a whole bunch of creators and channels that you already know, and with just that commitment to this theme. And you can find me on on X, on Twitter.
Yeah, make sure you guys follow John Payne on Twitter. That's it for today. But tomorrow I still got a lot more to cover on Venezuela. But I will be having Fiorella Isabel from Combo Couch. She will be rejoining. She was in Venezuela. She observed elections in Venezuela. And we will be having another reporter from Venezuela Analysis. So I told you guys, in this new era of RBN, it's truly banger after banger after banger. And we had another one with John Payne today, really forming an international coalition. Thank you for joining me, John. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. We'll get a lot more to Venezuela. Looking forward to hearing from our friend Fiorella and Venezuela Analysis for that. So have a good one, guys. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Thank you.